You live with me for free. Half of your pension will cover your rent, my son exclaimed, and his wife nodded silently, as if it were a normal arrangement. I smiled, swallowing the bitterness of betrayal. But when I got up from the table, everything changed. The justice they didn't expect began to destroy their world. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. I poured coffee into my mug and offered refills to Douglas and Leona across the dining room table. Sunday lunch had left the table cluttered with plates, the spring afternoon light coming through the windows at 2847 Maple Street in soft bands. I felt good that day, optimistic even. I wanted you both to know first, I said, settling back into my chair. I'm retiring next month. Pension comes to $2,400 monthly. Not much, but enough. Douglas glanced at Leona. Something passed between them that made my coffee suddenly taste different. Leona set down her fork with precision. That's actually perfect timing. We've been meaning to discuss your rent situation. Starting April, you'll pay $1,200 monthly. The words hung there like smoke. I looked at my son, waiting for him to correct her, to laugh it off. He studied his plate instead, pushing around the last of his food. Rent. I kept my voice level. I'm family. This is our house, Sylvester. Leona emphasized the word, like I might be hard of hearing. You live here. You pay rent. That's how it works everywhere. She slid a printed spreadsheet across the table toward me. The paper was crisp, the columns neat. She'd prepared this, planned it. Douglas finally spoke, still not meeting my eyes. Dad, you have to understand. We have expenses, mortgage, bills. It's only fair you contribute. I looked at the spreadsheet: room rental, utilities allocation, shared space usage, food costs. The numbers were itemized like a restaurant menu. $1,200. Half of everything I'd earned, over 43 years of engineering work, calculated down to the cent. When you mentioned the pension amount, Leona continued, her voice businesslike and cold, we realized you could afford market rate. Your room, utilities, shared spaces, food, $1,200, is actually generous for this neighborhood. I stood slowly, pushed my chair back without force. The legs scraped against the hardwood floor. I'd helped Douglas refinish 5 years ago. I didn't slam anything, didn't raise my voice, just looked at them both, my son avoiding my gaze, his wife watching me with the expression of someone concluding a successful business transaction. Interesting, I said. The word came out flat, almost curious. Very interesting indeed. I walked toward the stairs, my footsteps measured and deliberate. Behind me, Leona called out, we'll need first payment April 1st. That's 3 weeks. I didn't turn around. In my bedroom, I locked the door and moved to the closet. The cardboard box sat on the top shelf where it had been for 15 years, labeled in my own handwriting. House Documents 2010. My hands were steady as I pulled it down and carried it to the bed. The papers spread across the comforter like evidence at a crime scene. Cashier's check for $340,000. My signature at the bottom. Closing documents from March 2010. My name listed as buyer. Douglas Bell listed as title holder. The deed transfer paperwork. My handwritten note on yellow legal pad paper, dated the day of closing for my son's future. So he starts ahead of where I did. I'd been 42 years my career as a structural engineer, calculating load-bearing capacity and stress points, understanding exactly how much weight a foundation could hold before it cracked. I'd wanted Douglas to build his life on solid ground. Instead, I'd built him a weapon. The mortgage they claimed to struggle with didn't exist. I'd paid cash. The bills they needed help covering were for a house that cost them nothing, and now they wanted half my pension for the privilege of sleeping in a bedroom I'd purchased with my own money in a house I'd handed to my son as a gift because I believed a father should help his children succeed. I sat on the edge of the bed, the original check in my hand, $340,000. 15 years ago, that was nearly everything I had saved. I'd lived in a studio apartment for 2 years afterward. Yeah. Rebuilding my savings, telling myself it was worth it because Douglas would have security. From downstairs I heard laughter. Douglas and Leona, voices carrying up through the vents. Something was funny. Something had amused them. I looked at the papers spread before me, each one a fragment of proof. My signature, my money, my name on every document that mattered, except the one that mattered most, the title itself. I'd spent 4 decades reading blueprints, identifying structural weaknesses, understanding exactly where pressure needed to be applied to bring down what needed to fall. I'd been trained to see what others missed, to calculate the invisible forces that held things together or tore them apart. They'd made a miscalculation, a critical one. I gathered the documents carefully, stacking them in chronological order, the check on top showing the full amount, then the purchase agreement, the closing statement, the title transfer, each piece of paper, a load-bearing wall in the structure of their mistake. Downstairs, the laughter continued. I listened to it the way I'd once listened to the sound of metal under stress, detecting the frequency that signaled approaching failure. I placed the stack of documents back in the box, but I didn't return it to the closet. Instead, I set it on my desk within reach. I would need these soon, very soon. The pension letter from the state was in my nightstand drawer. I pulled it out and read it again. Though I'd memorized every word, $2,400 monthly, beginning April 1st, 3 weeks away. 3 weeks until they expected me to hand over half. I folded the letter and placed it with the house documents. Then I sat in the chair by the window, watching the afternoon light fade into evening. My room grew darker. I didn't turn on the lamp. They hadn't asked me to leave. They'd done something worse. They decided to extract payment for a gift to monetize generosity, to convert love into a monthly transaction. They'd calculated my worth in dollars, and found it conveniently equal to half my income. I sat in the gathering darkness, holding a piece of paper worth more than my son's integrity. Downstairs they were laughing. I didn't go down for dinner that night. I had work to do. The next morning, I found a printed document beside my coffee mug. House Rules and Expectations was centered at the top in bold font. Quiet hours between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. kitchen access schedule. Leona had morning priority. I could use it after 8:30. Shared space usage guidelines. The television in the living room was theirs. I should watch programs in my room. Leona appeared in the doorway, already dressed for her job at the medical billing office. Just some structure, she said. Makes everything clearer for everyone. I picked up the paper, folded it once, and slipped it into my shirt pocket. Clear is good, I said. She left without another word. Douglas came down 10 minutes later, grabbed a travel mug, and headed out. Neither of them asked if I'd slept well or needed anything. The house felt different now. Not like a home, but like a property with tenants and landlords. I pulled the notebook from my pocket. One I'd bought at the drugstore the previous evening. Small spiral-bound, fits in a hand. I wrote the date. Then, House Rules document presented. Kitchen access restricted. Shared spaces redefined as theirs. No emotion in the notes, just facts, times, quotes. On Tuesday, I came downstairs to find Leona photographing the inside of the refrigerator with her phone. She moved items angling for better shots. Her expression concentrated. Documentation purposes, she said, when she noticed me watching. I see, I said. Should I expect an itemized receipt? Maybe. We'll see how April goes. I noted that too. Time, date, her exact words. The refrigerator inventory. The implication that my food consumption was being measured against some standard she'd established. That afternoon, while they were both at work, I walked 3 blocks to a different bank than the one we'd always used. The branch manager was young, professional, eager to help. I opened a new account, checking and savings. Then I transferred $87,000 from my old savings account, the one Douglas and Leona knew existed, because I'd mentioned it last Christmas, when Douglas had been worried about car repairs. "Everything all right, Mr. Bell?" the branch manager asked as she processed the transfer. "Just organizing finances for retirement," I said, smiling. Want everything simplified. She handed me temporary checks and a debit card. I rented a safety deposit box while I was there, small but sufficient. Back home, I photographed every document from the house box using my phone. The check, the closing papers, the deed transfer, my handwritten note. I uploaded everything to cloud storage, then drove to my new bank and placed the originals in the safety deposit box. The copies went back into the cardboard box in my room. If anyone looked, they'd see papers. They wouldn't know the originals were locked away beyond their reach. Wednesday evening, I returned to my bedroom after dinner to find it noticeably colder than the rest of the house. The programmable thermostat in the hallway showed 58 degrees set for my zone during nighttime hours. When I adjusted it back to 68, Douglas appeared within minutes. Dad, the heat stays at that setting. We can't afford to warm empty rooms all day. My room isn't empty, I said. I'm in it. You know what I mean. During work hours, use a blanket. He walked away before I could respond. I noted the interaction in my book. Thermostat control, temperature set to 58, use a blanket, quote, attributed it directly to Douglas. Over dinner. Thursday, I still ate with them. Still sat at the same table observing. Leona mentioned almost casually. Douglas and I were discussing, seniors often prefer first-floor living, safer, fewer stairs. I'm 67, not 97, I said. Of course, her smile was practiced. The kind you'd give a difficult client. Just something to think about. Your current room would make an excellent office for Douglas. Home office expansion, you know, tax deductible. I'll give it thought, I said, and stood to clear my plate. A lot of thought. That night, I sat at my laptop and searched Oregon property law, purchased house in someone else's name, legal rights to property paid for by another person. The search results loaded slowly, but I had time. All the time in the world now. Constructive trust. The term appeared in multiple results. I clicked through to legal forms, statute, explanations, case precedents. In Oregon, when someone provides funds for property purchase, but title is placed in another person's name, courts could impose a constructive trust, recognizing the funding party's actual ownership. Despite what the paperwork showed, I took screenshots, wrote down statute numbers, found names of attorneys who'd handled similar cases, real estate disputes, property ownership challenges. 23 attorneys in Portland alone specialized in this exact situation. Friday morning after Douglas and Leona left for work, I read through everything again. The law was clear, documentation was key, proof of payment, proof that title transfer was intended as temporary or for specific purposes, written evidence of the relationship between the parties. I had the check, I had the closing documents, I had my handwritten note explaining the gift was for my son's future, not an unconditional transfer of ownership.